metal, screaming. Then nothing. That's the last thing I remember before blacking out. My name is Madison, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because the night I nearly died wasn't the worst part. The worst part was learning my parents knew and still didn't come. It was raining when the truck hit us. I was in the passenger seat. My friend lost control rounding a bend, and everything after that was a blur of shattered glass and twisting steel. I woke up in the hospital 2 days later, intubated and stitched up like a broken doll. The room was too white, too quiet. Machines beeped rhythmically, like my heart was on life support but still trying to fight. I blinked slowly. My ribs felt like they were on fire. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, just existed in the kind of pain that makes you forget who you are. Then I heard them talking, the nurses outside my door. "It's heartbreaking," one whispered. "She's stable now, but she was critical." We called her parents that night. You know what they said? They said they couldn't come because their other daughter was walking the dog. She didn't lower her voice enough. I felt it stab deeper than the broken bones ever could. The second nurse whispered back, shocked. Even when we said she might not make it through the night? They still didn't come. Said it was bad timing. I turned my head, the movement sending a bolt of pain through my skull. Tears welled up, hot and slow. Not from the accident. From them. They knew. They were told. They were given the words. Tonight might be her last. And they chose the dog. My chest ached, not just physically but spiritually, like something was breaking that had nothing to do with my body. I wanted to believe maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe they didn't hear it right. Maybe. But the nurse came in not long after. Her name tag said Marissa. She smiled, adjusting my foredrip. "Hey there. You're a fighter." Everyone's amazed. The first 2 days were really tough. I tried to nod. Failed. She paused, then her voice softened. "Your parents still haven't called again. But we're here, okay? You're not alone." But I was. My phone gone. My things stripped. My family absent. Even Brielle, my sister, didn't show. Not even a text. I lay there in silence, breathing through plastic, watching the ceiling blur from medication and heartbreak. And that night, as I listened to the rain tapping against the hospital window, I made a vow. If I made it out of that bed, if I healed, if I ever stood on my own 2 feet again, they would never be allowed to stand next to me again. When I was 7, I broke my arm falling off the monkey bars. I remember crying on the playground, my wrist bent at an odd angle, pain flooding my whole body. I remember the teacher calling my mom. And I remember exactly what my mom said. "Can she wait an hour? Brielle has dance rehearsal." That was the first time I realized something was off. That love in my family came with conditions. By the time I was 10, the pattern was clear. Brielle equals priority. Me equals background noise. She was the pretty one, the social one, the daughter with promise. I was there. When Brielle got the flu, the whole house shut down. Warm towels, soup, Netflix marathons. When I got strep, I was told to stay in my room and stop complaining. She got her own birthday parties. I got joint ones if they remembered. Once, I brought home straight A's. My dad glanced at the report card and said, "Well, of course you did. You're not really doing anything else." Brielle brought home a C in geometry and got a new phone for trying. That's how it always went. She needed braces. They paid in full. I needed a retainer. I was told to just sleep with my teeth tight. I used to believe it was accidental, that maybe I wasn't making myself easy to love. So, I became useful. I made myself the daughter who never caused trouble, who did her homework, who helped with groceries, who cooked dinner when mom was too tired from taking Brielle to cheer. But no matter how much I did, it was never enough. In high school, I joined the science club, volunteered at the animal shelter, and won 3rd place in a regional writing contest. My parents didn't come to the ceremony. Brielle had a hair appointment. My teacher shook my hand that night and said, "Your parents must be so proud." I smiled and lied. Even the accident, even that night, didn't break the spell. When the hospital called them, told them I might not make it, that I was broken and bleeding and alone, They said they couldn't come because Brielle was walking her dog. And the worst part? They meant it. It wasn't an excuse. It was the natural order of things. Brielle's routine came before my life. And when I finally came out of that ICU haze, piecing together what happened, I didn't cry right away. I just knew that if I had died, they would have grieved the inconvenience, not the loss. They would have posted a filtered black and white picture with a caption about angels and fate. And the next week, they'd be helping Brielle plan her weekend trip. Because I was never the center of that house. I was just the insurance policy. The backup daughter. The one who filled the gaps when their golden girl needed space.
But now?
I wasn't going to be second to anyone. Not even them. By day 5, I stopped checking the door. No one was coming. Not my mom. Not my dad. Not Brielle. The nurses had stopped asking me if I had someone to call. They knew. I was healing fast. The doctor said it like it was a miracle. My ribs were mending. The swelling in my brain had gone down, and the gash near my temple was already stitching into something permanent. But something else inside me had already sealed shut. The part of me that used to whisper, maybe they'll show up today. It was gone. Instead, a different whisper started growing louder. You don't owe them your presence. Or your pain. On the 6th night, Nurse Marissa brought me a cup of chamomile tea. She lingered. You'll be discharged tomorrow, she said gently. We'll arrange transport. Do you have someone who can meet you? I looked her in the eye.
No.
She hesitated. Would you like us to call them one last time? I shook my head. Then, quietly, I said, but I'll leave them something. That night, while the halls were dim and quiet, I pulled out the notepad from my drawer. For pages in, I began to write. Not out of revenge. Not even out of grief. Just truth. The kind of truth you leave when there's nothing left to say. To my parents,
You were told I might die.
and you didn't come. You chose a leash and a sidewalk over the daughter you raised, or at least pretended to. I'm alive. Not because of you, but because a group of strangers cared more about my life than the people who gave it to me. This hospital saved my body, and your absence saved my soul. I've spent years trying to earn love you were never willing to give. Now I'm giving myself something better.
Goodbye.
Madison. I folded the note and placed it in the center of my bed. I smoothed the blanket, removed the heart monitor, left the hospital gown folded neatly on the chair. The nurse at the front desk looked up in surprise when she saw me fully dressed, hair pulled back, a light jacket on. Are you walking? I said. She blinked. Alone. I smiled. The best way I've ever walked. I stepped into the elevator, the letter still waiting upstairs. By the time the doors closed, I already knew I would never set foot in that hospital again. And if they ever came, all they'd find was an empty room, and the truth they never thought I'd have the strength to say. They showed up a week too late. It was a Tuesday morning.
Quiet.
Overcast. The kind of day that makes everything feel heavier. They walked into the hospital lobby like it was just another errand, like they were showing up to return something, not to face the aftermath of their absence. My mom wore sunglasses, even though it wasn't sunny. My dad had that impatient look on his face he always wore when asked to wait for anything more than 30 seconds. Brielle trailed behind them, tapping on her phone. They walked up to the front desk. We're here to see our daughter, my mom said flatly. Madison. The receptionist blinked.
Typed.
Then paused. Room 214? My mom prompted, like she remembered it too late. The receptionist nodded slowly. You'll need to speak with Nurse Marissa. They didn't know that Marissa was the one who found my note. She met them at the hallway entrance, calm, measured, professional. My mom frowned. Is she okay? Marissa didn't answer right away. She was discharged last week, she said. My dad blinked. Excuse me? She recovered. Strongly. Quietly. She chose to leave without notifying you. My mom's voice rose slightly. That's ridiculous. We were busy. We told the hospital to keep us updated. Marissa remained composed. You were told she might not survive the night. You said you couldn't come. Then she handed them the envelope. The one I'd left on the bed. No expression. Just the transfer of weight. One truth, folded on paper. My dad opened it. Read silently. His fingers tightened around the page with each word. My mother read over his shoulder. By the third paragraph, her hand was covering her mouth. By the end, she sat down in the nearest chair. Brielle hovered behind them, frowning. She's being dramatic, Brielle muttered. She's probably staying with a friend. She'll come home eventually. Marissa looked at her with a kind of softness that didn't pity, just understood. I don't think so, she said gently. When someone walks out that quiet, they're not looking back. My mom whispered, "We're her parents." Marissa nodded. That's what makes it worse. The hallway stayed still. The note hung in their hands like a verdict. There were no flowers, no hospital bracelets, no trace of me in that room. Just a folded blanket, an empty chair, and a letter they couldn't rewrite. My mom began to cry, soft, contained sobs, like she knew even her breakdown came too late. My dad stood frozen. He didn't ask where I went, because deep down he knew he no longer had the right to know. They sat there for 10 minutes, and then they left, with nothing, because that's what happens when you leave someone for dead, and they live without you.
I didn't vanish.
I just stopped being visible to the people who only looked when they needed something. I moved 2 hours away, rented a tiny studio over a used bookstore that smelled like dust and second chances. It had one window, a creaky floor, and a bathroom the size of a closet. It felt like freedom. I paid rent from a savings account they didn't know about, the one I started building in secret during high school by stashing birthday money and tutoring checks. I didn't tell anyone where I went. I didn't leave a trail. And for once, no one followed. I got a part-time job at the bookstore downstairs. The owner, Mrs. Keller, was in her 60s and had a voice like a lullaby wrapped in gravel. She didn't ask many questions. "You're not running from anything, are you?" she asked once. I replied, "No. I already left it behind." She nodded like she understood, then handed me a stack of books to shelve and never brought it up again. At night, I journaled. I wrote down everything I couldn't say in that hospital bed. Every memory I used to excuse them. Every time I convinced myself their silence was my fault. I started therapy through a local clinic's trauma program. Free for students. One session at a time, I peeled back layers of myself I didn't even know were armor. "Why don't you feel anger?" the therapist asked one afternoon. "I don't know," I replied. Maybe I spent so long trying to deserve love, I forgot I was allowed to feel betrayed. He nodded. "You're allowed." That night, I cried harder than I had since the accident. Not because I missed them, but because I didn't. Not once had I thought, I wish they were here. That realization hit like truth often does, quiet, sharp, final. They weren't my safety net. They were the reason I learned to live without one. I enrolled in community college under my own name, first time in my life doing something for myself, without waiting for permission or pretending I wasn't worth it. No birthday messages. No check-ins. No apologies. And the silence? It was no longer painful. It was permission. A clean slate. I started writing again. Poetry, essays, memories turned into metaphors. Nothing I shared publicly yet, just pieces of me spread across blank pages like a trail of survival. I went to sleep without wondering who needed something from me. I woke up without checking my phone for validation. I ate when I was hungry, walked when I wanted air, laughed without guilt, cried without fear. Some nights I stared at the ceiling and whispered, "You did it." Because sometimes the only voice you need is your own, and the echo of a world you finally chose to walk into. They never reported me missing. They never tried to find me. Or maybe they did, and realized, too late, that I had already found myself. They didn't crumble all at once. People like them never do. They unravel in slow, messy, public ways, one excuse at a time. At first, they lied. To themselves. To others. "She's just being dramatic. She probably needed space." Madison always had a flair for the dramatic. You know how sensitive she is. They told the neighbors I was traveling. They told my aunt I was taking a break from school. They told themselves I would come crawling back when the real world hit her. But when days became weeks, and weeks became 2 months, people started asking real questions. At a family gathering, one cousin, the one who always saw through things, asked Mom directly, "Wait, didn't Madison almost die? Where is she now?" My mom deflected. "Oh, she's fine. She's just finding herself." My dad cut in, trying to laugh. "We've always given her freedom. She just needed some air." But that cousin? She wasn't buying it. Later, I heard she posted something on Facebook that started circulating. Interesting how some parents can't find time to show up in hospitals, but suddenly want credit for giving freedom when their daughter disappears. It didn't take long for people to put pieces together. Someone from the hospital, anonymously, leaked part of the intake log. A screenshot of a note from the ER nurse. Parents notified. Decline visit due to other obligations. That line hit harder than any accusation ever could. And when it started making rounds in the local Facebook mom groups, the very ones my mother lived in, the narrative cracked open. People remembered. The time I fainted at school and no one came to pick me up. The time I got left out of Brielle's graduation photos. The time I waited on the porch with my bags while the family went on vacation without me because there wasn't enough space in the car.
And now?
Now there was a paper trail. Now people saw it for what it was. Not teenage rebellion. Not drama. Abandonment. The perfect family image my parents clung to like a badge began slipping. Their friends stopped commenting. Invitations dried up. Brielle's Instagram likes dropped. Her influencer partnerships went quiet. One of her brand reps messaged her publicly. "Hi Brielle, we're pausing all collaborations until things settle." And settle they didn't. Because truth has a ripple effect. And silence, once broken, becomes a wave. By the 3rd month, my mom tried reaching out again. She sent a voice note this time, shaky, whispering like someone trying to sound fragile on purpose.
"We didn't know it was that bad."
"You have to believe me. If we'd known, we would have come. Please just tell me you're okay." I didn't reply. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I no longer needed anything from her, not validation, not apology, not even acknowledgement. They weren't grieving my disappearance. They were grieving the loss of control. The daughter, who always filled the silence, had become it. And in that silence, their carefully built image finally cracked wide open. It started as an anonymous blog post. Just a few hundred words. I called it "The Night They Didn't Show Up." No names. No hospital. No clues that could trace it back to me. Just truth.
Clean. Cold.
Unfiltered. I almost died. They were told. And they said they couldn't come because the dog needed a walk. I hit publish and shut my laptop, thinking nothing of it. But overnight, it spread like wind-fed fire. First 10 shares. Then 100. Then thousands.
People commented things like,
"This was me." I thought I was crazy. I told my therapist this exact story. My parents didn't come either. When I got hit, when I was bleeding, they still didn't come. It didn't stop. It got picked up by a wellness magazine under a feature called Letters from the Forgotten. And that's when the email came. "We'd like to publish your story in print. We want to pay you. We think you're saying what a lot of people can't." I said yes. Not for money. Not for fame. But because I realized something. I wasn't the only one. I wasn't the only girl who sat alone in a hospital bed waiting for a family that never intended to come. I wasn't the only daughter asked to understand cruelty as structure, distance as discipline, silence as strength. And sharing my story, it didn't make me weak. It made me loud. Louder than they ever allowed me to be. The essay was published under a pen name. Still no mention of Madison. Still safe. Still distant. But when I held the printed magazine in my hand and saw my words in bold, black ink, I cried. Not because it hurt. Because I had survived it. And now someone else could too. A week later, I got an email from a reader. A girl in Nebraska. "Thank you. My parents left me after I came out. I stayed silent for years. Reading your words made me feel less insane. You saved someone. You saved me." I printed that email. Taped it to the wall above my desk. I kept writing. Essays. reflections, survival notes turned into guides. And every time I wanted to pick up the phone and scream, "Why didn't you come?" I typed instead. Because that version of me, the one screaming in her head while machines beeped around her, she didn't need an apology. She needed a voice. And now she had one. I still haven't spoken to them. They still don't know where I am. But I imagine them reading the story, seeing the title, feeling a cold drop in their chest, wondering if it's about them, knowing it is, because the one they used to silence became the voice everyone else heard. A year later, I stood in front of a packed auditorium, microphone in hand, lights soft and warm overhead. Not in a hospital, not in a family home, but at a national youth trauma conference. I was the closing speaker, the girl who had no visitors, no flowers, no calls, the girl who walked out of the hospital with a limp and a note and never looked back. Now, she was a name on the banner. Madison Lynn, trauma essayist, survivor, storyteller. When they introduced me, the audience stood. Some clapped, some cried, some were just quiet, listening, really listening. And I told them the truth, not to accuse, not to shame, but to show them that survival doesn't mean walking away without scars. It means walking anyway. They didn't show up when I was dying, so they don't get to show up now that I'm living. I said it slowly, clearly, and somewhere in the back row, someone whispered, "Damn." After the speech, I stepped into the hallway to breathe. That's when a woman approached me. Her face was pale, familiar. Brielle. I hadn't seen her in a year. She looked different, smaller, like the pedestal she once stood on had finally cracked under her weight. "I saw your piece," she said, "and I didn't know. I didn't realize it was that bad." I looked at her, calm, unshaken. "You knew," I said. "You just didn't care to ask." She blinked, wounded. "I'm sorry." I nodded. "That's good to hear." She waited, maybe for a hug, a tear, a chance. I didn't offer one. I stepped back, and she watched me go, the same way she once watched me lay in that hospital bed and chose a leash over a life. Later that evening, I got a message on my public author account. From my parents. "We're proud of you. Come home." I deleted it without opening the full body. Not out of bitterness. Out of clarity. Because I had learned the difference between healing and inviting poison back to the table. My story was never going to be about them again. It was about me. The girl who flatlined emotionally long before the crash. The girl who waited, in silence, for someone to prove she mattered. The girl who finally stopped waiting and walked out. They thought I died in that hospital. But what really died was my silence. My need for their version of love. My craving for a seat at a table that was never set for me. I didn't flatline. I just left. And in that leaving, I came back to life.